start recording now. Um, okay, so this is the first session as far as ChangeGear administrative training. Um, we're not really going to get into like the nitty gritty as far as making changes to config files or anything that you won't really be able to do as a cloud customer. But we're going to focus really hard on the kind of administrative tasks you can do, and then probably later on as we go, we can start discussing what you won't be able to do with cloud, but that's probably for later. So we're gonna start with the web. This is the easy part. This is where you'll be working more or less day in day out with ChangeGear, where you'll be handling all your tickets, etc. When you log into ChangeGear for the first time, you'll show up here in the dashboard. This is probably something that we'll discuss a little bit later once we get into reporting. But you'll go over here and click on this 3-bar menu, and it'll give you a list of all of the modules that you have at your disposal. We're going to click on incident. I think this is a pretty good place to start. Give it a second to load in. All right. So this is your main view. I'll probably refer to this as the grid view later on as we're kind of going through all of the different bits of training. When you sign in, it'll start with your My Views. So My Views are personal to you. Everyone by default has active incidents and closed incidents. Any tickets that you are directly a part of, whether it was a ticket that you created yourself or are the requester of, or the direct assignee, you'll see these tickets under your My Views. Likewise, if you are a part of a team that kind of has ownership of the ticket, you'll be able to, under your team active views, you'll be able to see both tickets that belong to your team, but also are assigned to you, but also assigned to every other person within that team. So this might be like the general help desk queue. For example, everyone can kind of see where everyone else's tickets are at here. And then, of course, global views will be all tickets regardless of team, regardless of ownership. So you can always see what new tickets are in. You can always see what tickets are active. And then we also have closed and all incidents for generally what I see customers use this for is later on, like searching for solutions to issues. Hey, has anyone seen this before? Let's go ahead and check the all incident queue. So as a staff user, let's say someone calls in and wants to create a ticket, go ahead and click new, and that'll open up the form. So right now we're using all kind of default forms. So I'm going to go ahead and looks like we have some people in here already. I'm just going to go ahead and make myself a requester. So summary is kind of like a short description of the issue. So can't connect to printer is a good example. Incident type. So by default, we have kind of this generalized list of types of failure, etc., that you might have. All of this is editable and editable through the web interface as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and choose one. Printing. It wasn't any of those three below it. So impact, urgency, priority. Impact is kind of the wide scale, how wide scale the issue is. So of course, like a minor issue might be affecting 1 or 2 users, where significant might be a department, whereas major is printing down for the entire company, for example. And they kind of are what you define them to be, um, whereas urgency is uh, kind of how, urgency is urgency. How critical is it that we get this fixed immediately? And by default, there's some pretty good definitions for what each of those mean. Low is like no schedule versus emergency is the event's underway and we can't stop it. We need to fix this now. Um, and then a generalized priority based off of that. So conversation history is, I will probably call conversation history description. That's kind of how we've described it in the past. But essentially, this is your back and forth dialogue with the requester. So, for example, if someone sends in an email, they might say, "I'm having issues with the printer," et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That'll show up here in the conversation history. For example. So this part is public. There's actually a separate end user form, which is simpler. It doesn't necessarily have all of these fields here, but this is one that does display for the end user. Internal notes generally does not, at least by default. So this can be troubleshooting notes. This can be other members of the department offering ideas. This can be whatever you want it to be. But this section does not display to the customer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just run through a ticket quick, just to kind of show you the default flow and kind of how to do everything in ChangeGear as far as working tickets go. So I'm just going to go ahead and submit this ticket up here. All of these buttons up at the top are actions. Once we get into the workflow, which we should get to today, I kind of show you how to add custom ones and kind of what all of these do. So now the ticket is sitting in new. You can see it's here. You can also see that it's in the global ticket view. From here, you can actually, if you're the help desk manager, for example, and this is how you choose to assign tickets, you can assign directly to an individual. From out here, you can also double click on the ticket. That should, so another thing, and then you can just choose an assignee manually. The other thing to note is that if you choose like a first come first serve system or whatever you decide to do, from new, if you click accept, which is I'm going to fill out the issue and take control of it, you can see that it's now assigned me as the assignee by hitting accept. So there is some ability for your help desk to kind of go in, grab their tickets by sending a response and accepting them, and then that ticket will be assigned to them. So now the ticket is in progress. You have the ability to request more info from the requester. Maybe you don't have everything you need. It'll kind of put the ticket on hold if you're doing SLA or anything like that. Resolve the ticket, or we also have the concept of promotion. Whereas if this was like a larger issue, you notice that you're getting 10, 15, 100 tickets in about the printer. You can kind of bulk make that like a problem ticket. So all of these incidents are related to a single problem, and so you can generate a problem directly from the IR using this promote button. And so yeah, you can choose any problems or RFCs that already exist, or you can promote to a brand new one. I'm not going to do that quite yet. I think after this training, you guys should have some time to play around with it, and then we can kind of test that functionality. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say and resolve the ticket. So when you hit resolve, essentially what you're doing is you're giving it back to the requester for one last time to verify that it worked. Um, you'll be asked to put in a resolution, and then the requester will get an email. Please verify that the resolution that we gave you was accurate, or let me know so we can continue to fix it. And that's essentially what these two do. I'm just going to go ahead and close the ticket from here. So you do from any of your views, you have the ability to kind of customize. Let's say that you wanted to see who the owning team on this ticket is, or who the assignee is. You can go into manage view from any view and do show hide columns, and that'll grant you this column picker right here. And then, so this is a list of all of the fields available on a ChangeGear ticket, except long strings. So the main two to really keep in mind by default are description and resolution, are columns that you can add to the view. But I can go ahead and say I want to see the assign to. And then it's just a matter of dragging and dropping. Let's move that there. You also have the ability to, let's say that you want to do some sort of grouping of tickets. You can move any column up into this gray bar up here, and it'll give you an extra layer to kind of group. So tickets that are assigned to me, tickets that are assigned to you, etc. You can continue to group it even further. You can say, then also group tickets by status, so on and so forth. So kind of once you have the view the way you like it, you can save it as a new view. And this will add a new view under my views. So you can have personalized views that are kind of set up the way you like it. I definitely know the kind of how views are set up are very personal from person to person. The other thing you can do, there is a way to kind of create views that affect people globally. And that's using this edit view up here. And so this kind of gives you different options, a little bit more control. So you can specify all the fields that you want. You can add fields that way. You can change the captions, pixel format. Like for date times, you have a ton of different options about how those are set. And then the ability to do filtering and everything like that. So this is, I wonder, okay, there we go. Looks like I lost the page. So that's the quick 20 regarding like the module view, view creation, basic ticket workflow. Any questions so far?
I had a question.
Okay.
I saw on the incident pages that there's two fields, one for assignee and one for owner.
hmm
Generally, what's the difference between the two?
So, kind of the way we envision it is that the owner is the team that has ownership over the ticket. So you might assign the ticket to the help desk, and then from there the help desk might assign a person from it to the ticket. Um, a lot of the team views and kind of everything from there is based upon the owner field. So we intend for it to be used as like the the owning team field, more or less. Now
Okay.
that doesn't mean that you can't assign an individual. You have an owner, you have an individual owner, and then you also have an assignee. You can do it that way, but there is functionality with teams tied to this field right here.
Okay.
Um,
Thank you.
okay. All right. So this is at least at the top level. All you really need to do, all you really need to know to do most of the work in ChangeGear. We'll come back here and get into like reports, for example, and administration. But before I do that, I want to actually start showing you some of the features that are available here. Because kind of once you see how to create a field or change a workflow, a lot of the additional info from the web start to make sense. Um, so we're going to open, so this is the desktop app. I think a lot of you should have a copy of this installed. This is where you'll be doing your administration of ChangeGear. Some of it's day to day, some of it's you're only going to do every now and then, setting up your forms, setting up your workflows, but also user management, team management, um, etc. So let's start. Let's start there. Let's start with security. So this section really is going to cover the user and kind of everything they have as far as what they can and cannot access with ChangeGear. Um, so let's go ahead and click on a user. So every user has what's known as a role, or has a license, and then also a role. So there are three license types that you'll mostly come in contact to end up using. Named users are full ChangeGear access users, and they're also reserved seats. So if you grant a user a named license, they can they can get access to the full suite of ChangeGear features, and they'll always be able to access the software regardless of who else is on. Concurrent users also get full ChangeGear access, but you are limited to a certain number of seats. So in your case, um, let's see, you have 23 named users and 2 concurrent. So the 23 people that get named licenses will always be able to access ChangeGear no matter what. That license is theirs. Um, and then you also have users that might still need to access the full suite of ChangeGear, but they will not get full unlimited access. It'll be the first 2 people with the concurrent licenses will be able to access ChangeGear, and then the third will kind of be forced to wait. The way I've always thought about it is like seats in a restaurant. Your named licenses are the seats with the little reserved plaque in front of them, and then the concurrent seats are kind of open for anyone. And once those seats are taken up, no one else can kind of sit at the table, at least until someone logs off or their session is killed or they time out, or there are lots of different ways that we can kind of go about that. But you can grant 5 people a current license, but you're only allowing 2 sessions at a time among those people. Um, and then the third, you have site licensed. So you have an unlimited number of site licensed users, and those can be used for users who will be submitting requests, and that's more or less it. Requesters also have the ability to approve tickets. So if you have some users that might be asked to like approve changes, or yeah, to approve changes, they'll be able to log in and approve those changes, but they won't be able to kind of see the global ticket queue or anything else like that. So it's a really limited um, permission set, and you're primarily just going to use these for your requesters. So if you have a named or concurrent license, you have a quite a long list of roles available for you. So let's use kind of the basic staff role, IT staff. So you'll grant a user a role, and this kind of controls what privileges they have as far as what they can and can't see within ChangeGear. Um, so that's this middle tab here, privileges. As you can see, you have every kind of module within ChangeGear you have an option for. So I can say for IT staff users within the Change module, they can access it, they can approve, reject, do a lot of things, but what they cannot do is delete tickets, administrate, and then a couple other things. So for example, if you don't want your IT staff just to close tickets carte blanche, you can remove that privilege. Or authorize is another good one. In the default change workflow, you have the ability to do it's not a formal approval, but it's kind of you send it to a manager quick for like an informal authorization. You can kind of prevent users from just clicking authorize or what have you. And so you do have privileges for the workflow, and then in a lot of these cases, like you'll see instant default workflow versus voicemail. There's a large difference in the number of um, privileges. Some of these privileges at this top level are for the module itself, like being able to access the module. So what I just did there means that an IT staff will come in and they won't even see the change module. They'll see incident problem and then service request, et cetera, et cetera. You can kind of adjust what tickets they can edit or they can view. Like we've had some customers that will, so you have like, for example, view, view own, view team. View is the global view. So I can see with this privilege, I can see all of the tickets within ChangeGear, with a couple exceptions, which we'll get to. Whereas view own is I can view my own tickets. View team, I can view my team's tickets. So if I remove this privilege, when I log in, I will only be able to see my tickets and the tickets that are assigned to my team. I won't be able to see any of the other tickets until they're assigned to my team or assigned to me or what have you. And then we also have that with edit. I can edit any ticket versus I can only edit my own tickets. On top of that, you can also set kind of field level privileges. So you might say, and so this is getting extremely granular, where I can say in this module, in this workflow, in progress state, all of my fields are read only. So I can't actually edit anything. I can mark that the ticket was complete, but I can't do any edits to the actual fields on the form, or I can actually hide fields altogether. Um, and you can have that set for specific workflows for specific states um, in any of your main in any of the main modules. Um, Questions there?
Yes. Are we able to change incident to a different name? At least maybe on the front side?
So that's something that we will have to do kind of in the back end. There's a strings file that we can adjust. So we want to call incident something else, we can do that, but that's not something that we can change from this this section.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's our HR platform. They use incidents there, so we didn't want to confuse the end users.
Gotcha.
Oh, I had another question
All right.
too. For you mentioned the licenses being like requester status. Does that mean we need to set up everyone within the organization, or is that something that they automatically have access to just view and reply?
So that's up to you whether you pull everyone in or not. Um, if you do, you would have a significant number of requesters, and you do have some flexibility as to what those requesters can do, but it's fairly limited. You have I'm going to try to click all of the roles that count as requester. Um, these 5. So you might make everyone change requesters, for example, and they have, I can kind of show you their privileges. You can see there's a lot of things are grayed out and you can't really make a whole lot of changes. But, what can an incident user, what can a requester do to an incident? They can create new ones. They can submit. They can view their own. They can edit their own. They can reply via email, um, close the ticket, or fail the ticket's resolution, and not really anything else. Um, and it kind of works that way in all of the modules. There actually isn't, I don't believe there's significant difference between.
Well, I could see adding a specific person to a specific requester role, but I'm just saying, in general, as
Yeah.
far as like a front desk staff person who just needs to be able to submit a ticket, that scenario, and maybe reply to a comment on the ticket. Do we need to add their Windows account, as to a specific security role, or could they all be just put in a role by default and then we adjust them from there?
I almost always recommend the second, the latter option. Really, everyone comes in as a requester, and then if that person needs some elevated privilege, then we can go and elevate their privilege from there.
Okay, so that's my question is, how would we do that automatically?
So there is a utility that we have that will kind of pull Active Directory and kind of bring in users like that. There's actually a setting in the global settings that will right here. So we can say whenever a user is created automatically using auto registration or using the utility, it's going to create everyone as a change requester. Because you're going to have significantly more requesters than you are actual staff members, it would then be um, up to the user to come in and grant them the correct role. Um, so find the user, grant them their role. We can also kind of do it from the reverse. We can choose the role and then add members to it.
Okay, so that auto register piece, every time we added a new account, if it detected that new account, it would automatically just add them in as that role.
Yeah, essentially, it's a utility that does an LDAP query that you can kind of set up to run as a scheduled task. And so every time that task runs, it's going to pull the LDAP or the Active Directory OU that you tell it to, and then pull in any users that it finds. So if it finds a new one, it'll create an account for it with that requester role.
Okay, great. Does that also auto prune?
What's that?
Does it also auto prune? So if an account no longer exists, does it then take it out too?
So it will not delete users, but
Okay.
if you disable an account, it will update that account to disable it.
Okay, so once it gets removed from AD, is there a way to auto set that to delete too, or is it just something we have to prune manually?
Yeah, the accounts will remain. So what we do recommend is kind of using at least disable it before you delete it. That way the LDAP can get a pass at, or the AD sync can get a pass at it and disable that account. And then generally we recommend like yearly doing a cleanup job of your disabled accounts. Like I can, yeah.
Well, it might be okay if it just auto disables them if the account's gone. I think that might be okay for now.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So the kind of the third part of the security section are teams. And so teams are your kind of functional groups of users. So let's say, so this is going to be the help desk 1 team, kind of your first line. You might assign an owner, which is you do have the ability to, if a ticket matches a certain set of conditions, you might want to notify the manager of that team. You can kind of set that up here, as well as any like additional external emails you might want to CC. So this might be like a listserv or anything like that. There are 2 types of teams. Notification, which we'll be using for, I would probably guess, 90 to 95% of your teams. This is basically at a notification level, it's just a functional group of users. There's no additional security applied over top. The ticket is just assigned to a team, and then anyone who would ordinarily be able to look at tickets could still view it or do whatever they can based on the role that they're given. We also have the concept of security teams, which I really only recommend using if there are cases where tickets need to be cordoned off from the rest of the ChangeGear users. And so essentially what will happen here is a ticket gets assigned to a security team and it drops off of the face of the earth for everyone who's not in that team. And then if for example, you might have a ticket assigned to a security team and a user might get a link to it, you have the concept of a guest role, which means if I'm not a member of the team, I can view the ticket with these privileges. So I can view it as a change requester. So I would get like a really limited view of everything, or honestly, more commonly is no privileges, which means I would just get a blank screen. I wouldn't be able to see anything about the ticket at all. If I were to somehow get a hold of a link to it. So there's a lot of kind of additional consideration that we need to think about whenever we create security teams, and we'll generally design our flow around the presence of them, whether they're there or not. But I would say in the majority of your cases, you're okay using a notification team. And then of course we can add members from there. So I'm gonna just add a few like that. So now I have a team. So now we can actually go back and whenever you make changes like that, you can hit this refresh wheel right here. And if you're an administrator, that'll actually pull in any changes from the desktop app back into the web. So now I can see that my help desk 1 team is here as a selectable option. Okay. New in ChangeGear 7 is we have the ability to view security logs, so you can kind of see anytime a change is made in the back end here, you can see who did it, what role they had, what they changed and what exactly they did, whether it was an update or a create, delete, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this team I just made. And now you can see that it showed up right there. I guess the last final bit of security to note is that you do have the ability as an administrator to kind of see what the active sessions are, and if there's one that's kind of gone stale and you have someone waiting to come in, for example, since you have those concurrent licenses, you can go ahead and kill sessions just like that. So now what you should see is, see my session is expired. And then it should kick you back to the login page here. Okay. Let's see. So now I guess we're gonna get into now. I guess before we get into the module and we get into workflows and everything like that. Any questions on what's been covered so far?
I saw there was two different security roles. One that said incident changes and versus ticket changes. It was under the security roles section. Yeah, incident requesters and ticket requesters. What's the difference between that?
So it's really the scope of the kind of tickets that you can request. So for example, an incident requester can request incidents, but they can't request changes. I think, let's see, service request. So incident and service request, you can submit as a incident requester, whereas ticket requester is kind of your most wide open one. You have the ability to request incidents, changes, service requests. If you're a purchase like a Flex module or some additional process, you would also have the ability to request those as well. So it's kind of just based on how restricted access you want. Change requesters can do incident, problem, change, problem. I think it's just incident, problem. I'm gonna have to.
Okay, so it's a different created security role.
Exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
No problem.
So let me log back in quick. So we're gonna So after security and global settings, which we can maybe kind of get to later, I don't think there's anything super important there. At least to start, you have different modules for all of, or you have different sections for every module that you can kind of edit. So incidents are distinct from incident tasks. Um, Problems, changes, service requests. So I'm going to go ahead and click on incident management, and that kind of gives you this view here. And you can also view the same from this drop-down menu on the side. Um, so the ability to, edit my different lookup list options versus set automations, which we'll get back to after we cover workflow. We have like a back-end way of creating views. So I showed you how to create views in the web before. You can also create views from the desktop app like this. It gives you a couple additional options. Lets you create views that are usable from certain places but don't show up in the grid view or in the grid view. For example, you can create views over here. Kind of templatized email communications. And then really the most important one is the workflow here. So I just clicked on incident management and it opened up the workflow editor. There are really two halves to it. You have this kind of open pane right here where everything is drag and drop and kind of easy to visualize. And then all of that will correspond to this property section over here. So I can take a look at all of my different states. You can click on like the blue bars to view the state. So each of these top sections is what's called a state. So it's really a position that the ticket could be in at any point during the flow. Tickets that are new versus tickets that are in progress versus, waiting for additional info from the customer versus waiting the resolution of a ticket promotion. And then below each of these blue headers are the different actions that you can, each of the actions that you can do within that state. So for example, with close in each of these different sections means that from any point in the workflow, I can close the ticket. And there might be plenty of reasons why you would do that. A ticket goes stale, you reach out to a customer and they never reply back. It's been like 2 weeks, still no answer. The ticket was created in error, it was a duplicate, et cetera, et cetera. You do have the ability to close the ticket. When you kind of click on any of these actions, you can see that it switched to the action here under the properties. And it gives you a couple of different options. So for example, on close, it's going to show a comment pop up, which we showed there. There was a little box that popped up that allowed you to put in the resolution. And then also the name of that form, because you can create comment pop-ups of your own. The ability to recalculate the SLA. So you would do that, for example, if a really good place where you would do that is on like requeue. So the ticket, the ticket goes in progress. It's sitting in a certain team's queue. They realize that it's beyond the scope of their abilities. We need to send it to another group. So it'll requeue the ticket, create a new owner, and then requeue the ticket. It goes back into new for that new team to handle. So you can basically, the SLA clock starts as soon as the ticket is created. You also have the ability, you have from each of these states, you can pause the clock. So now the SLA, time the ticket is waiting for details isn't being counted against your SLA because it's kind of out of your hands. You can also reset the SLA. So, or for example, if you have a ticket that's given the wrong SLA, you do have the ability with this kind of recalculate SLA property to it'll keep the amount of time, but it'll switch to a different set of conditions. So you might say on like your critical SLA, and we can kind of get into that in a little bit. I'd have to enable it, but you know, a ticket that's critical priority, you might have your first warning after 30 minutes, and then you might start escalating it at like an hour or an hour and a half or 2 hours. Versus a ticket that's normal priority, you might have your first warning at 4 hours or 8 hours or kind of whatever you decide it to be. And so if you have a ticket that's incorrectly marked as normal when it actually needs to be critical, you can recalculate. It'll take whatever time has already elapsed, but then apply the 30-minute warning versus the 4-hour warning, et cetera, et cetera. So to create a new state. So let's say you're editing the workflow and you want to separate tickets that are on hold due to customer inaction versus tickets where you're waiting for details. You can right click in this. There's a couple ways of doing it. Generally what I do is I right click in this empty space and I'll choose add process state. And then I just kind of click where I want it to be. So right there, and see now it's created a new state, state 1. I can go ahead and call this on hold. So now I need to add some actions to on hold. So you can right click on hold and choose add transition. And so now from on hold, I can move tickets back in progress using either any of the actions that currently exist, or I can create a new one, just like that. See, now it added a new arrow. I've got a new action called hold complete. And then I'm also going to do the opposite way. So have tickets enter on hold. Just like that. So now I have a put on hold and the hold complete. So any of these actions that I created, custom ones, every action by default comes with a notify via email. A lot of the out-of-the-box ones have messages kind of already pre-written. So this incident was promoted. It was promoted to a problem or a change request. Here's some info. On custom ones, we wouldn't know what to put, so it's kind of this blank hold complete, notify via email. You would come into here into the workflow and click on the notify via email to edit the verbiage of your different notifications. Also, the ability to add a recipient, so you can send it to specific users, to specific teams, entire role group. So if you choose IT staff, it'll send the notification to everyone in the IT staff. And then we also have dynamic roles. So these are all kind of relative to the ticket itself. Like the assignee could change ticket to ticket, or the owner, or let's see, what's a fun one? Requester's manager. So each user has a block where you can set each person's manager. And when you run the AD sync, it'll actually do a second pass. If you have managers set up in Active Directory, you can kind of add that layer. So if you need to address someone's like a good example is like on a change request. The first level of a change request might be go to the requester's manager and get approval from him. So you can do it like that. And then contacts are any kind of non-ChangeGear people that you would want notified. But I'm just going to choose a basic one. I'm going to say notify the owning team owner. So I guess if you put a ticket on hold, for example, you want to notify the team boss that this ticket's been put on hold. As an example. Yep. So now that you have an email, you have some recipients. You also have the ability to create additional actions. So in addition to sending emails, we can run scripts or programs. We can assign or reassign the tickets. We can change values. We can fire other workflow actions, spawn tasks. There's actually also the ability to, it's disabled by default, but you can also have custom blocks of C# code run on the firing of an action. So really basic one is like edit value. You kind of choose the field that you want to edit. So let's say, good example is set. We're gonna change our due date and we're gonna set it to 5 days from now. So when this action is fired, it's going to change the due date. It's going to set it to whatever today is plus 5. Just as an example. Actions also have something called rules. So rules kind of are kind of like gates. You can choose who goes, or when the ticket, or when the action can successfully fire, or when the firing is blocked. So we can say, for example, when the following is true, permit the action. So if, let's see. I'm just going to choose a random one. If the incident type is customer complaint, we will block these tickets. We will block. I'm on the wrong one, but this would be a good put on hold. If the ticket is a customer complaint, you can't put the ticket on hold. And then you have the ability to kind of put a message that pops up if the conditions that would cause a block or that were to cause an exception, either the ticket is blocked or the ticket would be, anytime the ticket is blocked, you would show the user this message. So, etc. Okay, so this is the 101 level on workflow. Any questions so far? It obviously goes a lot deeper, and I think I'll kind of show you some of those deeper layers once you have a little bit of time to kind of internalize some of the earlier stuff. So, questions so far?
I'm assuming you can change the different fields upon the different actions. So, such as like if a ticket got reopened, it could then be escalated to another group within that organization.
Yeah, for sure. So, for example, if a ticket got reopened, I could say, edit value, and I would set the owner to. So you could set the owner to a specific team. Right now we don't have any teams, so it won't do that, but you can also clear out the owner. You can make the owner a required field normally, and then as it reopens, you can clear it out.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. see what we want to tackle. Okay, so we've made some changes to our workflow. Because we were editing the default, your only option is to save it as a new one. So I'll call this incident demo. Whenever you create a workflow, by default, it's not enabled and it's not set as the default. So the thing you'll want to do is enable it. And so once you do that, let's say you've decided, okay, we have incident demo exactly the way we want it. I want to make this the default workflow for all incident tickets going forward. Something you will need to verify is whenever you create a new workflow, by default, all roles have 0 permissions to it. So I'll show you what I mean. So incident workflow, we have all of default workflow, we have all of these actions. Incident demo, we have none. If you were to try to make that workflow the default right now, everyone would inherit this null permission. So since I'm the administrator, I feel comfortable setting it to all. Anything down below the default will not have the module level permissions like view and edit and administer, but it'll have all of the specific states. So you can see we have hold complete here, and we also have put on hold. We can see those there, but you won't see those under here. So once you're kind of happy with the workflow and you've set up all the roles for all of the permissions for each one, then you can go ahead and set it as default. You'll get a warning message making sure just that you've set up all of the privileges correctly, and then if you're okay with that, you'll click yes. And then from that point forward, all new tickets will use the incident demo workflow instead of the normal incident one. The reason we have it like this is because you can have multiple enabled workflows. I think Change is a really good example of a use case for that. Like you would have a different flow for emergency changes than you would for normal changes. Usually the difference is the order in which you do the approvals, or standard changes which don't actually need it, which really only need approval once, then after that there's no additional approval needed. So that would end up being a different flow than your regular change process. So now we're gonna kind of get into the meat of it. So down here under advanced, we have the entity editor. And this section is where you do all of your new forms, new fields, new workflows, or not workflows, new lookup lists, etc. So really, primarily, you'll be here for form creation, but this is also where you'll do field creation and lookup lists as well. So as you can see, you have an option for each of the modules, kind of like over here. We're going to stick with an incident just for ease of use. So I clicked on incident management, incident request, and now we have some choices. We have form, model, lookup lists. Grid tables is an extremely advanced option we have within ChangeGear. I think for the purposes of this training, even overall, we will not kind of be messing with grid tables at all. But in the meantime, we're going to click on forms, and then you can see we have all of these different forms available. Staff and end user are the main two. So end user forms will be what displays for the requesters only. As you can see, it's kind of got a pretty simple layout. requester email, phone, summary, description, um, some other basic info, versus the staff form, which is um, what you'll get when you click new from inside of ChangeGear like this. So this is the staff form. And so you can kind of see the difference between the layout here and the layout in the editor. Everything is drag and drop. So you can move the fields around here. So I can move department name over here. I kind of mess things up a little bit, but as you can see, you have some control over the layout. You also have this toolbox over here, which is important for two reasons. First, it's all of the list of fields that you don't currently have on the form, and then if you were to click on one of the fields that is, or any of them, it's also the properties window for each of the different fields. Um, so on owner, for example, you have the caption, you can set a default value, you can set dynamic filters, which we'll end up doing in just a second. Filters. So owner and assigned to are interesting because they're actually they're using a specific table that is the combination of all of your users, all of your roles, and all of your teams. And so you can specify specifically, I just want to show teams here. And so that's what this filter is. I think you can do 0 for just users, or you can do 1 for just roles. 3 is teams. Specific lookup views, etc. A lot of the times you won't really be messing with a lot of these, but making fields required.
Is there documentation on those filter numbers?
So the filter numbers one specifically is within the SunView software, like our support knowledge base. I don't know for a fact if it's in the admin guide, but I do know that it's in the knowledge base. And I can get you the KB number for that.
Awesome.
So I guess since we're here, let's look at the dynamic filter. So any drop down that you have, unfortunately, it's not available for string fields yet, but for our drop downs, we'll have this dynamic filter property, and that gives you a few options. The first one I want to show you is this filter. So a really common use case is a customer will say, when I assign a ticket to this specific team, I only want assigned to show me members of that team. So we kind of have that, we have that disabled by default, but as soon as I say this and click OK, now when I go to once I save this form and make it active, you'll choose a team, and then the assignee will be assigned to will be filtered only to those members. From here, you can also do things like dynamic show and hide. That'll probably be a little bit later today that I show you that, and also dynamic set. So I can say, better example for the set is, when I set a requester, I want to see basically what you're doing is you're doing post back. So I'll set a requester. Let's do myself. And then I have all of these additional fields available to me. So I can say, you might create a field and say, this field is going to be for the requester's pager number. And so I don't have a field yet, but I could say phone PIT becomes pager, or email equals email. I know that email and phone email, phone, location, and department are already kind of automatically set, but you can kind of use that dynamic set to uh, add additional ones to kind of extend that out. Um, so to create a new field, you can click New right here. That'll give you this little dialog box. I can choose a name. I'll call it New Field. Choose my type. So text, long text. I think that's just a difference of characters. I think this is 100 and this 100 characters, and this is 1,000. I think. Numbers, currencies, Boolean, date, time. I'll just do a regular text field for now, and I'll call this new field. Click OK. And any new fields that you create, you can find in the toolbox here. Down at the bottom, they'll have a UDF underscore prefix to it. So UDF is just user-defined field. Any custom anything you create in ChangeGear will have some sort of user-defined prefix to it. So UDF for user-defined field, UDT for user-defined table. Those are really the two main ones, and then you can just drag it onto the form, just like that. So a good example, now that I'm thinking about it, kind of showing you the dynamic show and hide, is a common use case that I've seen is change the caption here. We'll do that. A common use case that I've seen is customers want some additional form of justification if an impact or an urgency is marked at the top level, the most critical level. And to do that, they'll add a text field and allow you to kind of add some justification to it. The other thing is you don't want that field to display until you actually need it to. So a concept that we have in the form editor is what's called groups. So I can select, and I'm just doing control clicks here. I can select a number of fields and I can group them together like that. You can see it added an option with a caption here. You can create those groups even around one. And then if you edit the caption to be surrounded by double curly braces, like that, it becomes a caption that you can trigger commands off of. So now I can say under urgency in my dynamic filter, if my urgency equals emergency, I want to show this group that I just created. So that's really what the double curlies are for. It allows you to use that group with the dynamic filtering. So by default, this section will be hidden until urgency equals 1, and then it'll kind of paint itself in. And so you can have required fields here that remain unrequired until they display. You can have, sections and subsections that all kind of dynamically show and hide depending on your conditions. So I'm going to save this form. Create a staff form, make it the active one. Whenever you create a new field, you'll get this dialog box. You've modified the entity model. Saving will apply schema changes to the database. Um, just know when it does that, the save will take a little bit longer, but it's all writing and saving all of your work. Um, I guess while we wait, questions on the form editor so far? Okay. Whenever you create new entities, um, so
Did,
fields, lookup lists. Go ahead.
sorry, I have one question on the phone number. Like we have an extension there as well. Um, is there a way to prevent people from putting in like all zeros, or like if a string is matched, also reject it?
We can do that using rules. We would have to kind of set up specifically what strings uh, we want to reject. Generally, with some of those, like the phone number or the extension, etc., uh, those are being posted back directly from the user profile. Um, so if someone were to specifically change it, that would be up to them to specifically change. But by default, that info is being filled in automatically off the um, out of their user profile in here.
Gotcha. We just have some folks that wouldn't have an extension because they're not assigned to direct phones. So we require them to
Yep.
put an extension in, but some people they don't know what it is, or they're just in a hurry. They don't put in all zeros or something. So
What
So
AD field would be used?
um, for extension,
Yes.
let me see really quick. Um, if it's not in this import sheet, I can find out for you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll have to find exactly what that would be normally. It looks like by default it's not filling in extensions, um, or it would not fill in extensions. But we can add rows to this. I can I'll have to do a little bit of research, but by tomorrow, let's say, I should be able to tell you what the AD attribute is for that.
Okay.
Okay. So whenever you create new fields or lookup lists, etc., um, you'll need to come in here into global settings, and under advanced settings, you have the restart change gear. You'll choose the second one, restart the web and API. So this is the equivalent of doing an IIS reset. Um, it's maybe a second or two of downtime. I'll show you here just how quick it is, just like that. But if you have people working and they try to save within that second, they might end up losing their work. But once you do that reset, though, the other thing you'll notice after you do that is the next time you try to load and change gear, it'll take a little bit longer to load because it is reloading everything back into the application pool, including your new changes. But now what you should see is we have our form. I can tell from the shortened summary that we're using the new form. And then if I set urgency to emergency, now this field popped up. And so now this is an additional option that we need to fill out. And we can also set it as emergency or as required, and it'll stay required. But the second I change it to something else, you don't have to fill it out anymore. So that's kind of the dynamic show and hide. Oh, and the other thing is we don't have any teams, but I would then show you the team to assign to. Okay. So in addition to just standard, string creation like this, there's a slightly different method to creating drop-down lists. So when you're creating a drop-down, there's two questions. There's really one question you need to think about beforehand, and that's do I have a lookup list already for it? So the lookup lists out here are the actual tables, the list of all of the available selections, and that's what I'm going to refer to as a lookup list. The actual physical drop down on the form, I will refer to as an association, either association or drop down, as distinct from lookup list. So this priority drop down is referencing this priority lookup list, etc. So here in the entity editor, this is where you create both the lookup and the association. So under our module, first we're going to go and create a lookup, a brand new lookup. For a common one is we'll do yes and no. So it'll be like yes, no, not applicable, etc. And so we'll give it a name. Names in general follow database rules, so no spaces or special characters. So we'll call this IR yes, no, and then the caption can be whatever you'd like. So we'll do yes, no. So once you've created your lookup, you'll do the file save all changes. To kind of commit it. And the lookup list names can be extremely general. Like you might have multiple yes, no's on a form. So you might have are you able to continue working? Yes, no. Is this issue affecting others? Yes, no. And so all of those different options are referring to the same exact list of options. But all of those are distinct associations. And how you create those are under the module name, so incident request, and then model. So the model is kind of your repository of all of your fields and all of your dropdowns. So this is another quick way that you can create new fields instead of going into the form itself. You can create a field like this, choose your data type, choose your field name. Generally, this is where I like to go if I need to create a whole lot at once. Versus if I'm just creating like one or two for the form specifically, I can usually okay to do it the other way. Whereas associations, this is the only place where you can create these. So I'll go ahead and click associations and then add association right here, and then choose my name. So field name is, let's see. You know, every customer has their own why can't I think of the word? Their own kind of format with how they name their fields. Generally, I like to do the module name and then kind of what it is. And then you'll choose your field data type after you select your name. So any new lookups that you create will be right here at the top with the I_UDT_ prefix. And so there we have a brand new dropdown named IR affecting others, utilizing the IR yes no list. And then save all changes. So you don't have to do a save between every single item that you create. But what I will say is, if you're going to create multiple lookup dropdown, or lookups and associations, create all of your lookup lists at once, and then do one save, and then do all of your associations at once, and do another save. You don't want to create a lookup list and then try to create an association to it without saving it first. You'll get errors and it'll be a mess. But at this point, we now have an object that we can put onto the form. So new form, we're going to customize it, and then you can see here we now have our affecting others list that we can add to the form like that. All right. And then of course save it, and because we create, so I did want to show you, I'm going to try to do just the web refresh, as I like to call it. When you click the refresh icon here, we added it to that new form and saved it, but you can see that it's still not there. So we're going to go into global settings and restart the web. And now you can see that it's right here. And so the last thing you'll want to do is, now that we can go back into the incident management lookup lists and then add our different selectables. Yep, just like that. Okay. Any questions on the form editor?
Where would we set that friendly name for that field?
Okay, so in the entity editor, we'll go back to the form. Where is it here? And then you can right click and change caption. Or the other way to do it is by clicking F2. We'll do the same thing. So you can either do it there, you can also do it under the captions property here.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. So this is enough to be dangerous with ChangeGear. With everything we've kind of covered in the past hour and a half, you can, work tickets, you can make changes to the workflow, you can create new fields and add them to the form, create new forms, kind of all of your basic administrative tasks that you can do in ChangeGear, we've kind of already covered. I guess the one other thing to show you is that some administrative tasks, not all. This is definitely like version 1 of the web-based administration. You can actually do from the web here. So you can actually from the web do a web restart. You can actually restart the ChangeGear services. You have to be an administrator to see this page. Also view the security log, kill sessions. And then the other main thing that right now you can do using the web administration is make adjustments to your lookup lists. I think there is some sort of delay. I don't know if it requires like a cache dump, or actually let me try it quick, because you can see here that our yes no lookup isn't right there. So it takes a little bit longer to do it from the web than from the desktop. But let's see if that. I'll have to look up and see what exactly you need to do to get new lookups to appear here, but I know that you definitely can. But you can also, create new lookup list entries. So um, you know, and then you also have in some lookups like type. Type is a good example actually. So some of these lookups have kind of cool extra functionality with them. So a good example are your like incident types. You can kind of say that for any specific type, like hardware issues, for example. Hardware issues are going to get assigned to this team or to this specific person. And then you can also say if one isn't set here, inherit from the level above. So any of the subset of hardware, so any of these, someone might select disk drive and then it can inherit from hardware. And so you can set a specific assignee. So, and then anytime those tickets are created and submitted, it'll automatically assign to this individual or to that team. So not every lookup is like that, but the types in almost every module is like this. So that's kind of a cool. What did it set? There we go. Okay. Let's see what else. Let's talk about reports really quick. All right, hold on. Why did that happen? Hey D, do you have any specific questions? I was forwarded your email. Anything I can do to make this training a little bit better and can help, I can do that. Any specific feedback? Okay, I guess no specific feedback. All right, so reports. So reports, we have a lot of different options available to us. You can click on the new button here to create a new port, table reports, bar charts, et cetera, et cetera. Most of the time you'll be creating table reports, and that's your kind of basic. Here are my incidents by location. Right now we don't have any tickets, so there's not really a whole lot to show, but in a lot of cases you can add a date range, so et cetera, et cetera. A lot of these different options, bar charts, scorecards, et cetera, those all kind of work into the dashboard. Um, and so dashboards are, how do I even describe it? So dashboards are kind of like your quick KPIs. Here are the number of tickets that we closed, tickets by type, et cetera, et cetera. What did I do? Okay. So we're just gonna add a couple widgets. By default, everyone has, unless you're an administrator, everyone has two dashboards. You have your My Dashboard, which is you know, unique to you, and then you have a persona dashboard that's related upon a property of the role you have. So kind of going back quick to your roles, persona just means what's my dashboard, executive, IT management, IT staff, etc. These are kind of just basic different levels of the view. IT management cares about different things than your specific staff users. So you can create a different persona, or you can create a different dashboard for each. So yeah, they all kind of work the same. You have this list of, you have this kind of menu. It's all drag and drop. We can add widgets here. So you have a lot of different options. I can add a pie chart. We're just going to use kind of the default pie charts. You know, you have a lot of different options per module, per etc. So I'm just going to do active by priority. This should say nothing since we don't have any tickets. That's fine. If you have a dashboard layout that you're kind of happy with as an administrator, something that you can do is you can save the dashboard for a specific team. So this is new in ChangeGear 7, the concept of team dashboards. So in addition to your personal and your role persona dashboard, you can also do ones for teams. So the help desk might, so in addition to like each role, the help desk might have its own dashboard, or server team, or hardware, whatever. Okay. So so reports are a little bit tricky because you can certainly do them in the web and with any of those specialized like that, any of the reports other than table, you have to do them in the web. But in my personal opinion, you get better functionality doing the reports out of the reports tab of the desktop app. And so from here you have all of the same things you get in the web. You have your different modules, and under each module there's a section, and these are all just kind of for your own personal organization. I'm gonna go ahead and like click new. So I'm gonna create a report on instant tickets, and so that'll generate, once this loads in, this window here. And so it follows these steps. So you'll select your fields, and it's the same drop column chooser from that I showed you at the beginning. I don't really have a good idea of what this report will be. Let's just add the assignee, for example. And it's going to be filtered by, or it's going to be grouped by status. So I'll move that in there. And then, filter. So this grants you the same sort of kind of filtering criteria that you get from the rest of the inside of ChangeGear. So status does not equal this, or status equals that, or it's blank, or it's not. You have the ability to do ands and ors. So I'm just gonna kind of add some. Let's add some additional statuses. So status equals in progress, or it equals new, and say priority is critical. So you can kind of, so basically what I generally do is I'll set up all your kind of criteria with the basic ands and ors here in basic, and then I'll come into advanced here and check my work. So check to make sure that my parentheses are all in place. So for example, it is grouping based off status, but you'll have to manually come in here and change it if you want. You know, status is in progress or it's new and critical. Just kind of like that. Validate that it's correct like that. Ownership, you can actually kind of filter the ticket down at each level just to show the person who's running the report or a specific team or all tickets. I very rarely see it be anything other than all viewable. And then from here, this is something that you do not get out of the web side, is that you can set up distribution, automatic distribution of the reports. So, you know, every Monday at 1:45 p.m., send me this report as a PDF or as an Excel file. You know, click OK. Once you're happy with it, it'll ask you to give it a name. New report, and then it'll ask you to save it. So an important thing to note, everything defaults to My Reports. Anything under My Reports isn't publicly available. So you might be wanting to set up a report that anyone can access. Make sure you choose one of your different categories, and that the categories that you're choosing is based at the beginning when you chose incident, and then save it from there. Okay. So, any questions? All right. What I'm going to say is let's take a 10-minute. Let's come back at 2. Kind of think about what you've all learned, and then we can spend the next couple hours kind of doing Q&A. And if we don't have 2 hours worth of questions, then maybe we can end it early. Give you guys some time to play around with ChangeGear, try out what you've learned, et cetera, et cetera.
Sounds great.
Sound good to you? Okay. I
Yep.
will see you at 2.
Wonderful.
All right. I guess how are we all feeling? I know there's quite a bit of it, and I think most of it's not really going to make sense until you have your hands on the product. But I can try to answer anything I can now, and then maybe with a half a day to kind of play with it, we can make tomorrow's session a little bit more productive. Of course, if there's anything I can do to kind of, if you feel like there's issues with the pace of the training or anything like that, definitely let me know. I'm certainly open to making changes.
Hey, is there any mock programs that you can put on my computer so I can just play with this?
Mocks, no. But what we can do is, and generally what a good idea to do is we'll kind of utilize, just go ahead and play with it.
Because there's no way I'm going to actually learn this until I actually get in there and dig it in.
100%, and that's kind of, and I agree with you. I kind of feel like the 4-hour training is a bad format, just because I can talk all day, but until you're really kind of experiencing it, you don't even know what you don't know or what to ask. Um, what I would say is, if I don't know if Brent would have it, or who would, but if you can get a copy of the desktop client,
Mm-hmm.
I would absolutely just kind of create a workflow, leave it inactive, mess around with it, do a form, leave it inactive, play around with it. Um, as long as you don't have multiple people kind of in the same place at the same time to overwrite each other's work, you can. There's certainly room to play. Um,
So
if you're doing,
everybody is basically going to be tied into this one program, right? So
yeah,
departments won't have their own program that's set aside for them.
not from my understanding, no. I think
Okay.
everyone will kind of be sharing.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yep. Hmm. Can I ask just who I was speaking to, just so I can kind of put names of voices?
Yeah, that was Dave. I'm the facilities
Dave.
manager. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So this is Kim. Brent, have you thought through a possible scenario related to Dave's question? Is there a way we can set up instances that, you know, people can do pilot workflows on, and that at some point, is it possible just to then delete those from the active system? Like, say we set a timeline of 2 weeks or something, and then we can go ahead and start building our actual workflows after that time frame. Have other companies done that? Brent, do you have any suggestions for how we can tackle having the different departments on one application? Okay, well, Brent may not be back on. Justin,
Yeah. So
you've never had a company ask for
no,
a,
we definitely have, and I think the main ways that we've ended up solving this is, um, we either do different forms. So we have the capability of having multiple active forms, multiple active workflows. One will be like the true like default kind of that everything starts with, and then we can, by team or by incident type. So something that we absolutely can do in this, and I've seen it done before, and I think it actually works pretty well, is when you when you when you select a specific incident type, for example. So ignore that says failure, service request, etc. Departments 1, 2, and 3. You select department 2 or anything beneath it, and then when you submit the ticket, we can have it as part of your submission script. Say, okay, I want to show this form instead, and go down this workflow instead. Um, we can also do what's known as a template. And so what you'll end up doing here, template is kind of like a pre-saved, half filled out form. So a good example is, password resets are always going to kind of be the same. So you kind of just pre-fill it, so you don't have to fill it out every single time. Part of that is we can actually save as part of the template a workflow and a form value. And so even if the form we choose isn't the main default, you have as an option this little arrow right here. We don't have any, so it's hard to show, but you could have Department 1 ticket, Department 2 ticket, HR, purchasing, etc. And you can click on this arrow, click on the your option, and that'll give you the start of a ticket with the correct form, the correct workflow, some of the correct values filled out, etc. That's really the best way to handle kind of multiple departments sharing the same space, and then also vast use of team views, because everyone in each department's going to kind of rely on tickets being owned by them. And so the purchasing department can always look at the team active tickets and see all of the active purchasing tickets. And kind of just other view manipulation, you can kind of set things up so that you're only looking at your stuff versus like the global all, which is going to be an amalgamation of everyone's everything. If that makes sense.
Okay, so this is Kim again. With that being said, is there a way to set up a test template for the 3 different departments that will be mainly utilizing this tool? It would be IS, facilities, and materials management. So could you assist us with that so that, you know, they can actively get in and,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
start processing, you know, how to modify or, you know, make changes or add from the knowledge base or, you know, whatever may be, you know, in their best interest of their department. And then
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
we could better get back to questions. So, Brent, I don't know if you're back on now, but does that sound like a good next step to you?
Yeah, that works for me.
So the thing to know, especially if you're going to be using multiple different forms, is this field that we've not added to the form yet called editor layout. So the best way editor layout is hard to describe but extremely important to use. Essentially what it is it's a field that stores the name of the form that you want to use. So when editor layout is blank, it's going to use the default. If editor layout is set to new form, it's going to use new form. If it's set to facilities, it's going to use facilities. Um, Essentially, what you'll need to do kind of in practice is whenever you create a new form, you're going to add this field to it and then change the default value to match whatever you named the form. So new form, just like that. And actually, what were the 3 departments again? Just so I have that listed. Okay. So okay, we have the new form with the new editor layout new form. I'm going to go ahead and save it as is. Whenever you're creating templates involving new forms, momentarily set that form to be the active one, just like that. Then when we refresh it, as it finishes loading for me. You can see the editor layout, new form. We're going to create a template and call it new form. And so that'll be like the name of your department, etc. And then the other thing I want to show you is once we've done that, we can put the default back as the active, or whichever one is going to be the generic. Make that the active. So as you can see, we've lost our is this affecting others field? We don't have the new form. It's just the regular template. But if you click on the arrow, we can pull up our different form. And so this is going to be how we're going to let these 3 different kind of groups coexist. Is they're each going to have their template. We actually have an editor layout type field for the workflow, just called workflow. So here, looking at our workflows, you can have some tickets using incident. You can have some tickets. You basically do the same thing, where you add the workflow field to the form, and then you set the default value equal to the workflow name that you want to use. So incident demo or purchasing or what have you. And when you open the ticket, it's going to use that workflow. It's going to use that form. As long as each team is kind of editing their own thing, you shouldn't really see problems. Something we will want to discuss are, like, I think lookup lists and fields are kind of places where you might have some kind of overlap, and we'll have to be a little bit more considerate about options for each. But
Is that because each department under the new forms, let's say the facility forms, will use the same lookup items in the list, and then if that changes,
Exactly.
it'll change it on the other one?
Exactly. So
if someone changes it accidentally, it'll change it on all three forms.
Right. So if you use the default priority and someone makes a change here, that's affecting everyone. So you can 100% create kind of your own. If you have lookups for specific things, like I'm sure facilities are going to need lookups for objects distinct from some of the other groups. It makes sense to kind of create those. But in cases
Can you protect those forms with a password protection so that if someone does try to change something, it'll come up saying, hey, you can't change this, it's going to affect someone else?
No. Well, we do have the ability to do kind of password authentication on the tickets themselves. So you can password protect certain actions. Is something that you can do. But as far
Justin,
as
sorry, Justin, I thought you were finished. This is Kim again. Wouldn't that be covered in security roles? I would imagine that changes at that level can't be done, but just with the people assigned to that privilege, correct?
So there is a privilege for each module. That's just administer module. So if you have the administer module permission, you have the ability. You have this tab. You have the ability to make changes to workflows, make changes to forms, make changes to lookups, everything. So we can limit it down to just a few administrators, who it would make sense if they're at least talking to one another if they're going to make change to something shared.
How would we know that it's shared?
Because I think it's going to be part of our design.
So anything in the
right?
lookup list will be shared, right?
Yeah, lookup lists will be shared. Since you're using different workflows, those will all be different. Absolutely free to use different, create different fields and use different fields. Lookup lists and business policy automations are really kind of and views really are kind of like the main places where you might be affecting others, because if you're creating views in a certain way, it'll show up for everyone. And maybe that's fine. Maybe it's just how you label your views. You call it a facility view. And maybe the answer is security teams, where you kind of cordon everything off from everyone else. So there are different options, I think, but as far as lookup lists especially, those have a high probability of kind of being shared amongst each other, and so there should be some kind of at least coordination, unless you're creating new ones, which is fine. Types, I definitely see there's room for issue here, but no, we've definitely had it so that multiple groups are using ChangeGear, utilizing the same module, and they all we can make them work together.
So yeah, moving forward, that would be helpful to us as a group, Justin, is if you focus on those parts of the application that will be shared, so that we can put particular focus on making sure there's controls around, you know, those pieces and
Right.
parts.
Right.
So
So
the answer
everything
would be, yeah.
yeah. So everything we've covered so far today are things that any administrator can do. So anyone can come into ChangeGear if they have administrator permissions and create new forms and edit any form and edit any workflow. But there's also, you know, logs. If someone does something that's like not good, you know, I can see here that I made edits to the incident demo form. You can, you know, it's not hard to see that someone screwed something up. But it's all kind of universal ChangeGear administration. The other kind of place that is shared, and we've not really gotten to it today, is the CMDB. I think it's going to be a bigger discussion. I think we're all talking we're talking on Thursday about kind of CMDB and what all is going to be involved with that. So I don't necessarily want to get super into this. It kind of works really similarly to the rest of ChangeGear. The only difference is there's no workflow, but really lookup lists, you know, BPA work. Those are really the two main things that are distinctly shared. But everything can kind of be cordoned off from one another, either through creation of separate forms, separate workflows, separate, etc., and then also maybe security teams as a layer on top of that.
Can you walk us through creating a form from scratch?
Yeah. So there's no true from scratch with this. The closest to from scratch that we can get is basing it off of the default form. I'm going to go here, click on default staff. Generally, the first thing I will do is I will add the editor layout and the workflow fields, just like that, and then I'll save it as a new form. And then really your main choices are going to be end user or staff. Some of these kind of preview and mobile forms are kind of more niche in how you use them, but generally you'll pick staff or end user. Click OK. Now we have new form 2. If you then at this point, it's up to you to kind of change the design. You might decide, all right, I don't need department name, so I'll drag that off. I don't need location name. I want to add the what even?
So let's say you're adding a priority. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. You're adding a priority thing. It's going to come up with a drop down for the priority to set your priorities. Let's say high, low, medium, emergency. So you can set that, and then you go into incident type, and then you can put. It'll give you a drop down for those. Now, when we get all this set up, Brent, are you the one who loads all the data into this program, and then it'll feed off the emails and stuff like that, and uh, buildings and such like that?
Yeah, the plan is to load that in, yes. For the users, they're already actually hooked up via AD, so we should have user information. One of the things I was going to ask actually is, how would we use an AD default on the form?
As in, kind of getting fields out of the from out of the AD onto.
Yeah, so if someone opened up a new form, like right now, our system automatically drops in their username. The email is hidden, but it's there. Their location, that kind of stuff.
So by default, that happens automatically for email, phone, department, and location. So so all of that information is being fed from the requester's user profile. So let's use you, Brent, as an example. So you see it added in your email. It looks like we didn't have a phone number in, so it didn't fill that out. But it would also do location and department. And so it's pulling all of that information out of here. So yeah, it looks like you didn't have that's the problem. It was pulling from mobile instead of phone. So if we wanted to actually do that, since we figured out what the issue is, we can go into dynamic filter. And this is how you'll add additional ones as well. We'll go to this third column here, set. And then we'll say, I want to fill out phone PIT by mobile phone, which is that field where, right here. So go ahead and save it, and then once that form is active, next time it'll make sure to take that info out of mobile phone and then put it in here in this phone column. And so if we look back at that, we can actually see that it's set. This left column is all of the string fields in the incident module, and then the right field is all of your different attributes out of that user profile.
Can
So
additional attributes be pulled in from AD?
Mm-hmm. So we have, I think I was showing you this before. We had this file right here is part of the AD sync utility, and essentially these are the fields that we're querying. So if there are additional ones we want to put in, so if we want to say
Office.
Yeah, extension number.
We don't fill in the extension number in AD accounts, but we do put in the office.
Yeah.
Which would be the location, which would marry up to our location field.
So is that different than this one?
I believe so.
Okay. Yeah, we can absolutely pull that in. We've done it for, and then it's just adding additional lines to this file. That's probably something we can have a work session on and discuss what user information we need to pull in. Because it looks like right now, going back, yeah, these are the only users that have been pulled in so far.
Correct.
Okay. Let me see really quick.
Does the query automatically update users every night? So say if I change someone's department today, will it update at a certain time?
So that's something we'll need to set up to do. It doesn't do that by default. Essentially, the way we've set it up is that you can run it as a Windows scheduled task, and then at that point you can schedule when the task will run, how often it'll run, etc. So I
And it'll
guess
sync
yes.
any new attribute change.
Yes. So you make a change to this AD import file. Next time you run it, it's going to use whatever change to the AD import, whatever is in the AD import is what it's going to query. So you can absolutely decide down the line that I want to add an additional attribute, and then when you run it, it'll do the update for every person, because that'll be a new field for every person.
Okay, but if the field already exists and it's been changed on the AD side, on the next sync, it will update it for that user?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, I noticed that those fields, like location and department, were grayed out. But say like extension is pulled in, but there's no extension for the person. Is there ability for them to edit that if it's pulled in but not there?
So that's something that we can adjust. If I were to look at the form, I have a feeling those fields were marked intentionally as read-only. If we were to create a new extension field, it would just be a matter of leaving that to not be read-only, so that they could put it in an extension if AD didn't pull one in, or if ChangeGear didn't have one for them. Now it won't like backfill it. Like, you can't make the change on the incident and it'll update the user profile, but you would still have the ability to kind of manually put one in if you needed to.
Okay, so the form we're looking at, is that the form that the IT staff themselves will be using to edit and modify tickets?
Yes. So right now I just set it back to the default form, and I can see here that it was set to read only.
Okay, it's just the
So
setting.
it's just as simple as changing that property.
Okay. I'm familiar with these concepts based on our own internal system, so
yep,
that's fine. As far as the users go, like when they put something in, can we set the form to look different from them? Because if that's our form that we're seeing on our side, they may not need all those fields.
Yep. So this is the default end user, and I'm actually, as you can see, it's a lot simpler. Request for email, phone, summary, a couple extra ones. This is actually a really good time to show that off. So requesters, when they come in, will get this page instead. And essentially what they will get to do is they'll click request help, and they're given this extremely simple form. So I think I broke it, and then it's an emergency, of course, and then they can attach evidence, etc. And it'll fill out an extremely simple version of the form. So it just takes whatever they wrote in and then duplicate it between summary and description. And then from there, as the technician, you can add additional info and fill in the rest of it. Right now, you don't know what it is, so it's just a failure. And that includes changing the urgency, etc. But the other thing I want to show you is, because I'm logged in as a staff user, it won't show as well. But when they can come back here into the view and click on the ticket, and it'll pull up with the form that looks like this. Essentially, just with the ChangeGear look and feel. So I'm sure you can extrapolate kind of what that'll look like.
So they would come back in and add a comment, and they would just type in the add box and hit add.
Yeah, exactly. They'll type in a description, save it, and then you'll see it. You'll see it in here. Everything is timestamped. Another cool thing that you can do as a staff user is you have this email button. It'll pull up one thing I think, so this won't show because I don't have an email for my account, but by default it'll show the requester, and then you can add additional emails in there, and then basic subject, basic message, and then that email will be applied into the conversation history with a timestamp, and you'll see both messages going in and coming out. If they come in through email versus if someone comes in physically into the form and replies.
Will that be required that they know how to type out the full user's email, or does it have sort of a search function that ties back into our Office product?
Here, let me do this. I saw that Brent had an email. Okay, let me save this ticket first. I believe it by default is using this email field right here. If it's not that specific email address, it's required that you actually have the full email and either type it in correctly or paste it in. Let me set a due date. Yep, same. It pulled straight from here. There's also a field called CC recipients. So if someone emails in a ticket and CCs a bunch of people on it, ChangeGear will store that info. And it's set as a dynamic role, so you can choose in the workflow at what points you notify the people who are CC'd on the ticket. Like you might not CC them on every single item, but you might say on major points, like the ticket's been moved and in progress, or we think it's been resolved, or things like. It's just another dynamic role that you can add. I don't remember offhand if the CCs get automatically added here, but I can find that out by our next session.
If you reply to that email you just sent Brent, if he replies back to you, does that go on the actual work order as a reply?
Yes, it will.
Was it set up with a default email from address? The system itself?
Let me see what we've set up, or if we've set up anything. Yeah, we've not actually set it up yet.
Okay. And then
so this can be. Go ahead.
Does that work with 365?
Yeah, absolutely. So outbound, we can either do SMTP or EWS.
Okay. I'm good. Okay.
Yeah, so it's just a matter of putting in the right credentials. Same thing with inbound. POP3 EWS. I think EWS is far and away the preferred option. And it's just making sure that you have your Exchange URL, the web services, the web services URL for Exchange, and then.
And are you able to change the from user based on which team it comes from?
We can. I don't think that that's necessarily I don't think that that's necessarily best practice. I think in general, um, what you'll want to say is that we are all using ChangeGear. Um, Everything is going to come out of ChangeGear, whether it be a facilities request, whether it be a purchase, whether it be anything like that. It's all going to come from the same address, and it'll have um, whether it's an incident or a service request. And that might be the other thing to consider as well. Like facilities, I would consider a facilities request completely separate from like a break fix incident. Um, so facilities might come out of service requests, and that would be different by the SR number or by the ticket number. It would be SR instead of IR. So that's another way that we can kind of separate things if all of our different groups are doing service requests versus break fix incident. Service requests being someone needing something versus someone needing something fixed, um, if that makes sense.
A little bit more of a situation for us because we're looking at using SLAs, and we were told that that's only on the incident piece.
Not necessarily. As far as I remember, you can actually have SLA and service request. I'm going to go ahead and I don't know if you all are in ChangeGear, but I'm going to restart the system really quick just to get the SLA piece going.
So my initial thought on this was to separate the individual departmental teams into teams, and then there might be queues for other folks here. So like our security group might have their own team, our network might have his own team, that kind of scenario. As far as like service requests, how would that fit into that process? Because right now, just we have a facilities request form that just has various types of facility issues, new items they might need. Would there be a reason to put that over to incidents? I mean, is the difference between the modules just the naming? I mean, is there a big difference?
So there are very slight differences. The reason why I would say use service request over incident is whereas you click new, it opens up one form under incident. Service request is specifically designed to host multiple different request types specifically. So when you click new on a service request, it gives you a list of options. Access, hardware, move, software, facilities, even. And these forms are all different. Like, so here's a training request. Course name. Here's the end date, program types, etc. Compared to like a hardware request, which has its own unique lookup lists. Now they all share the same workflow, at least by default, but they are all completely separate forms. And so as part of that, you could set an owner. So, hardware requests always belong to this team, or always are assigned to this team versus facilities versus, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that this overall is maybe a better fit for what you guys are planning on doing. The reason I did everything in incident, at least as far as the training goes, because it's by far the simplest module, like both to understand and to kind of show everything off. I want to.
I guess it's. I should say it's pretty important to us to know where to put these three teams, because if there's a feature that doesn't exist later on and we need to use it, we'd have to rebuild it underneath the other section, and that's not something we'd want to have to do twice.
Right.
This is Kim. Probably the best way to confirm that would be to go back through our requirements, which is what we used for the demos. You know, the features we absolutely had to have. So we need to go back through that list and make sure that all of those features are covered in whichever option we choose.
Right. Yeah, it looks like we have service request SLAs do exist, so I know that we can utilize all of that here. So here's kind of the main breakdown differences between. Main one with incident is no approvals. There's no true formal approval process in incident. It's really basic, you know, ticket module. No real concept of approval. You go, you fill out the request, you close it. Service request gives you approvals. You do have the concept of approval. You have the concept of approval groups. You have all of the other functionality available in incident, including SLAs, you know, business policy automations, workflow editor, plus that functionality of being able to choose specific request types. So this is probably more tailored for handling multiple forms, and then we can also do multiple workflow on top of that. From an ITIL perspective, they're both kind of different things, but you know, ITIL is head in the clouds. In addition to being best practice, it's not usually possible to be 100% ITIL compliant. But so I think a good use for, since we have a session tomorrow, is let's go ahead and take a look, or maybe even some of our session today if we're ready, kind of go through those requirements step by step, because I'm not 100% familiar with them, and just try to kind of get everything kind of out in the open, and you know, prescribe best choices from there, if that makes sense. And then maybe even start building out and start doing like design and configuration.
Definitely makes sense. Brent, do you have that template available? Maybe we could just send it out to the group so we can all kind of follow along.
Template for what exactly?
The requirements gathering sheet that we did for the demos.
Oh, the features list?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the features list, but it's in SharePoint.
Let me see if it's attached to the project on my side.
I did submit it to them, so if they did attach it to your project, you should have it.
Okay, let me check that really quick.
Okay.
Here.
And they did mark on the feature sheet what they did and what they couldn't do, but I think for us the question more is where should we be applying these forms at specifically to start with. So it sounds a lot like we should be in the service area, based on the fact that we want SLAs, and then some folks will have approvals, some may not.
Right.
I
think, yeah. I think
Um,
that's probably the best choice.
I'm also looking at the end user side too, like when they come in. Currently, right now, I sent this in an email Word document with the two forms that we kind of use right now, but for them, they may want, okay, yeah, so you have a selection list when you come up there. So if the user doesn't know what they want, that might be situational, I guess. General request,
Yeah.
okay.
So we can certainly like it's not default, but it's extremely common configuration. Someone doesn't know what they want, they'll select general. Um, it's super common configuration to at the staff level say no. What you're actually asking for is a hardware request, and then send the ticket back with have them fill it back out with the specific hardware info that they need. Um, that's extremely common, kind of doing the morphing between the different forms if it's incorrect. Um, Likewise, we can also pare down this list, and you can have options that are available on the staff side that are not available on the end user side. So you can make it really easy for them. You can make it just the 3 different options, but there might actually be additional service request types um, in the back end. And by back end, I mean staff area.
We may
I
end
mean,
up.
can you just put in, I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead. Go ahead, Dave.
in that area right there where it says request service, can't you just say facilities request, IT request, and purchasing request, and then it go to another department, and then it'll break down what is your item, what type of item are you, and then it'll.
Not with this portal. We do have there is a service catalog functionality which doesn't necessarily look like you have. That is more exactly that. It's you can choose. You can kind of
I mean, you
choose
can
like a
choose where you're going, and then it'll drop down
yeah
what is your issue, and then it'll go a little farther to that. And
yeah
that seems like that
more
might work way better, a lot better
yeah
for the end user,
right
or the
like more
the person
explicit
trying to put in a work order.
cataloging of services. Um, yeah, let me make note of that.
I mean, what do you think, Brent? Does that make sense?
There's a bunch of different ways to do it, so that's, yes, it could, but is that the best way
And
for us to?
if I'm a nurse going in to put in a work order request, the easiest way is to find out first what department to send it to. Is that not correct? And then after that, go to break it down to what in that department I need fixed or an issue I need taken care of.
Right. So I think utilizing what we have on hand, that really comes down to
Because
maybe
general
saying the
request
services requested
crosses
just our
into both our area and your area, and also uh, uh, purchasing area. So if I think it's going to confuse them to have like a general request right at the first thing because they don't know what department they're going into first.
I agree with that, and I think we can absolutely change the list of services requested just to be kind of be like those 3 main departments, and then we can do some kind of trickery on the form itself, so that if it's a work order, we can have certain fields display for them to fill out, or if it's something else, we can have a different set of fields display for them to fill out.
Right, but get them to the
Um,
person. Yeah, just get them to the
yeah,
person. The
yeah.
area first.
If we had the service catalog functionality, we could more explicitly set up like a list of options, kind of like more discreetly. So purchasing services. Here are all of the different purchasing services. Unfortunately, with what we
Yeah,
have,
exactly.
we kind of this is what we have to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, we can change the names on that. Can you put subfolders into those? Once you click on, let's say we change the first one to facilities, and once you click on the facilities, it drops down. Okay, what are your facility? What do you think your facility issue is? Is it
no,
plumbing, electrical, blah 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 blah.
Unfortunately, not from here. So what we can do, and I suggest that we do is they'll select the top category. It'll be at first it'll be kind of relatively straightforward. It's like, okay, this is this department's form. What kind of request are you actually suggesting? So
Okay, and it'll drop it down
there,
there.
et cetera.
Okay. Well,
and
that's the
then
same thing.
from there we can add additional fields in, kind of just depending
Okay,
on
cool.
how complex each of those different options might be. Kind of like keep it all on one form for the department, and then so on and so forth.
Like if they click on electrical request, and then it'll drop down. Is it an outlet? Is it a light? Is it a light bulb? Is it and so on and so on.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like using that
Okay.
dynamic show hide that I showed you way before for like the urgency justification. That is exactly the use case that I'm suggesting here. Or your use case is a great great one for that functionality.
I think the simpler we make it for the end user or the nurse or the doctor or whoever it will make it easier for our job because they'll just be confused.
Yep, absolutely. So essentially what will happen is, I mean, I'm not going to build out a form right now, but they'll select the one. They'll select, laptop, and then a bunch of fields related to laptop are going to fill in or display on.
Oh, cool, good.
That's all.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something we would need to get from the salesperson?
No. What I just described is what we have right now. Would work with what we have right now. And I actually think it's a pretty good solution considering. Both on the administrative end and on the from the end user ease of use perspective. Let me see right here. Is this the thing?
Justin, were you able to find the requirements list in your project folder?
Yeah, I'm trying to pull that up right now. I
Okay.
have the questionnaire, I have the statement of work, and then I have a PDF that I'm trying to open. So
Okay, Brent, I just sent you an early features list. I'm not sure if that was the final, but maybe if you want to take a look at that so we can focus on those requirements, that would be helpful.
Yeah, that was actually the review sheet. It didn't have the full list on it, but I pulled it from SharePoint, and I'll send it out in 1 second here.
Yeah, no, all I have is that PDF ended up being the sale order. So yeah, if you could send that my way.
Okay, everyone should have it in their inbox.
Thank you.
No problemo.
What took you so long, Brent?
I had to go find it and save it.
So Justin, just to recap, when we were doing the demos, all of this same group was involved. And so this is a compiled list of requirements. And, the core of of what kind of features and functions we need to have in place once we get it designed.
Okay. Yeah, it's pulling up for me right now. We'll kind of go over it together. Okay, so based on a template or custom selection, item is sent to various members. Okay, yep, that's certainly doable regardless of module. SLAs, reporting. So I guess the first one that sticks out to me is HIPAA. So I don't necessarily, I would need a little bit more information about what exactly you would need as far as,
You can strike that one for now.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is we're going to tell them not to, put HIPAA-related material.
Right,
but sometimes
okay.
they do.
Right. I was just wondering if it's a similar situation to like power where there are so many different NERC controls and compliance that need to et cetera. Okay.
Be met. Yeah. Initially, we had our risk safety department sitting in the same demos. So that was mostly focused on incident reports related to, patient care.
Right, okay.
So you can see the requesting department in column C there.
Yeah. Okay. Single sign-on is you should be able to single sign-on right now. Is that the case? Have you guys tried?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Okay. LDAP is for sure. Assignment key. Yep. All of this so far so good. So I guess just a question for me. How many tickets? I guess how far back and how many tickets are we looking to import?
We were
because
still on the fence about that.
Okay.
So, I mean, right now, completed tickets, we go all the way back to 2005, and there's like 466,000 tickets there, plus facilities and what they have as well. But I'm not 100% sure we need to pull all those in. We may go back maybe 3 years, 5 years, depending on what we want.
We should probably have a more in-depth conversation on this soon because I will say ticket importing is never as easy as it seems at first. It's always kind of a mess. So we need to kind of, probably not today's call, but later on, kind of discuss what all exactly is going to be involved. The import method if we're pulling straight out of a database versus if we're doing flat files versus et cetera. Regardless, a lot of that data will need to come to me, so it can't be anything super sensitive because I have access to the cloud. Generally, what we do as far as imports go is we have a utility that basically we take the Excel sheet or whatever it is, CSV, and we transfer it into an Excel format that ChangeGear can read, and then just have the utility kind of run like a SOAP call that imports records using that SOAP XML data. That's generally our primary import method. So that's kind of something we'll want to discuss. I'll always make a note of that.
Yeah, just for general knowledge, we run about, processing about 1,000 tickets a month.
Okay.
I'm not sure, Dave, do you know what your volume is normally on a monthly basis?
It's probably, just as a guess, maybe 200,
Okay, so
250,
we're
somewhere around
probably,
there.
yeah, we're probably talking about 1,250 a month. Um, that would be for the last however much time. So we'll
Right.
get together internally and talk about what that looks like. Good question.
Um, yeah, escalation is something we'll need to set up, but we can certainly do it. Um, we do have a mobile app out. It's available on all of the app stores. There is some that is something that we'll want to kind of discuss look and feel on. There are in the entity editor. I'm sure you saw it. Um, there is the concept of mobile forms.
Now, yes, but you have to activate those mobile forms, correct? So that anybody who's using a mobile phone can download that, right?
Yep. So essentially what it is there's the app. It's available on all of the app stores. You'll put in your domain/username, your password, your Windows password, and then the URL for ChangeGear, and that'll log you right in. And then it is just a matter of creating, the mobile forms. There's a separate end user. There's a separate staff.
Now, do you have to create a total new form, or will it import the information that off the original form?
So it will import the info off the original. The actual like data set is the same. The forms are just kind of different ways of displaying that data. Um, so we would make a adjustment. We would probably go off the default and kind of keep close to it. Actually, let me see what the service request mobile forms look like. See if that yeah. So it's pretty straightforward like this. They'll have their drop downs, everything. We can kind of keep the form relatively simple on the mobile versus on the desktop. Um, and then kind of once you set those as active or create them, they'll be available. Um, so okay, ticket tags. This is an interesting one. So this is basically just like a keyword search. I want to see tickets that let me see. Like I know in knowledge base you can do that. We have the concept of like keywords. You can do a search based on a couple keywords. It'll pull in everything with that keyword. Um, is that kind of what we're talking about here with the ticket tags, or?
Anybody on the IS team who requested that can give Justin more detail on ticket tags?
if not today, not a problem. When I do my write up for at the end of the day for this call, I'm gonna try to make note of things I'll need more info on or requires some further discussion.
Okay, yeah, I think the tag label piece was more so for like grouping tickets. So if you need to search through a ticket, that scenario. Like, say
Okay.
I want to find everybody who submitted a ticket for password resets, that kind of scenario.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. So.
Oh, yeah, now it's actually, guess who the requester is? Kim. I see that. But yeah, that's for all of those drop downs. We would want to just do a key search, you know, because we have different team members covering different types of tickets. So
Right.
it would just be a quick kind of search function.
Okay. So parent-child, depending on what you mean by that, can be pretty straightforward or pretty difficult. We do have the ability of relating tickets, but it's kind of more on a, you can relate SRs on kind of like a flat level. There's not really like a in module hierarchy to them, but you can kind of do. But there's also the concept of tasks, which are kind of like little sub tickets related to it. Um, so depending on what exactly you mean.
I think the main point of that one was looking for being able to move a ticket to a global status, saying, hey, we've got 5 calls about this now, so now we're going to track it on one ticket, and then we're going to attach all those other tickets to that main ticket.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So we can discuss this. This is kind of probably getting into like ITIL problem management. Generally, like what ITIL says is you generate a bunch of incidents get generated. You know, the phones are down, and all of that gets rolled up into a single problem ticket, which is the phones are down. And then within that problem, you're doing your break fix analysis and everything on that problem, and from there you might generate a change. Um, and so we do have all of that functionality, but as far as you've got 5 tickets for the phone being down, all kind of grouping into the same type for one, we don't really have that function. Um, if that makes sense. Um,
I was pretty sure they showed us something very similar to what we were asking for when we were doing the demo. Because they kind of went down the same thing and looked at each one and then kind of went off the demo.
Okay. Let me talk to them and see what exactly they showed, because we can absolutely do promotion, which is what I described, where everything gets grouped into a ticket of a different type. But kind of all like at the same level is a little bit different.
That may be what they showed us, because they also showed us tasks when we were talking about that as well.
Yeah. Let me verify something really quick. Right, service desk. Some of this kind of intelligent functionality, like automatically doing related tickets, automatically providing KBs. I don't think is not included with the version that you have. Those are both machine learning features which come with the um, service manager level, not the service desk. So we will not be able to do 22 or 23. At least at an automated level, we can certainly there's certainly a ability to do search and relating and everything like that with the version that you have, but automated pull of related like resolutions or knowledge-based articles is kind of out of the scope of what you have currently.
So the automated pull refers more towards if we pull up a user, we can see all the tickets that they generated, or if we pull up an asset, we can see all the tickets that they generated.
Oh, gotcha. I interpreted this as I have this issue, show me related issues automatically.
That's the second one there, the 23.
Yeah. So that one, this one we probably won't be able to do. At least at an automatic level. We certainly have the ability to do search. We can do like even cross-module search, like this search bar here. You do a search here, and it'll search all of ChangeGear, not just the knowledge base. So you can put in a certain phrase, and it'll try to grab everything it can for you, relatively intelligently, not full-fledged machine learning level of intelligence.
But that's all three departments, right?
Yeah, that'll be everyone. This is
Okay.
global for the entire ChangeGear product.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. I will want a little bit more information about what you're looking to integrate with. I see Outlook, of course, and kind of what each of those integrations are, like what would be involved with each of those. We have, like, for example, we do have integration with Outlook, but it's at a very limited level, and we would essentially have to custom write the integrations for any of the others. We just kind of want to see what, probably have another discussion as to this piece.
Yes, understood, Justin. I think part of the integration discussion when we were doing the demos was related to risk and safety being involved, and then wanting to know if there were options to link to our electronic health records. So since they are not participating in this phase one of the project, we wouldn't be addressing that.
Okay, perfect.
Any other integrations, though, Brent may have on the IS side, we'll have to talk about.
Okay.
Is that you, Nick?
So the scheduling, that's scheduling of
Okay.
changes, or?
Sorry about the delay on that. The question I have is, does ChangeGear have or our module that we have the ability to parse XML from, like, say, email or something? Because we're looking to integrate our NMS to automatically create tickets, for emergencies and whatnot.
That's the name of Sophia.
So we do have, email is maybe our simplest integration. It's not necessarily parsing XML, but we can certainly, something we've certainly done is, have, like, for example, SolarWinds sees an event, it emails ChangeGear, it creates a ticket with the information on it. As far as specifically parsing that text to fill out additional fields, it doesn't quite do that. It'll just do, subject and body, summary and description.
That's fine.
Yeah. So that's certainly something we can do. And also kind of more, so we can certainly hard code values on those emails that are coming from the integration source. But it would basically just be subject body.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Depending on what exactly this means, this might be functionality that's on the way. I know that some of our power company customers have asked for like blackout dates and kind of better scheduling. So
I think that's under the risk department, so we
yeah,
could probably
okay.
My guess.
Yeah, they were mainly looking for like a calendar functionality, but we were told that wasn't in there.
Yeah, so there is a calendar. Generally, we use it for kind of announcing RFCs. It's the functionality is there. It's not super super in depth, but there is some sort of scheduling functionality that we can do. And then everything else looks good. This one seems a little bit sketchy. I mean, I guess if you have some way of getting those users in, we can let them submit forms, but generally, ChangeGear is designed as a like as an internal help desk product, not necessarily a external, like customer wide world facing. We have some customers do it. It's usually a little bit sketchy, but again, this looks like it's lowest
are you
priority.
referring to? Sorry about that. Are you on line 34? Are you talking about the customer feedback?
I'm looking at 35.
Oh, okay.
Which again
thank you.
risk department, which I think we're not going to touch. Now, customer feedback we can absolutely do. We have survey functionality. There's actually a couple different options. There's the concept of customer sentiment in incident, where when you submitted or when you have a ticket go for resolution, there's just a big, thumbs up, thumbs down. How was your service? And then we also have the ability to send surveys out. So that survey can be anything. Please fill out this quick survey. How was your service, et cetera, et cetera. So we can get feedback that way.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yes, so 35 was again related to kind of patient care, incident reporting. So not as important for the groups that are initially going to be in phase 1.
So within the groups in phase 1, I guess this mostly goes back to the data migration. But we're like, I guess how much like there shouldn't be any patient data in any of this, right? Because certainly that would not be good for me to just have my hands on to import. But,
not in the facilities or the request system that we have currently.
Okay, perfect. Just to verify.
The only thing you might see in there is like a patient account number, but that's not going to help you with anything.
Right. Okay. Yeah, think about, yeah. So all of this, at least as far as we have, with a few exceptions, but the vast majority we should be able to accomplish, no problem.
And just to clarify, you're thinking we should be able to accomplish this in that service module versus the incident?
Correct. Yeah, all of this can be done within in service. The one, maybe the way I would expect. So I guess these are all, no, scratch that. Yeah, service request is where you'll want to do this for sure. Um, Especially with your three different groups, it seems like it's all requests versus incident. Truly.
And just to note,
So
initially, the materials management team will be inside of the CMDB stuff.
yeah, and, so CMDB we can get to work from. So CMDB kind of touches all of the other different modules, um, or it can if you choose for it to. So that's not really a problem. That's kind of like agnostic to wherever we decide to put our tickets.
I could see some of their workflow being, asset management as far as moving equipment between facilities, that kind of stuff. So there might be some asset management forms workflow.
Yeah, I think we would end up doing all of that within service requests as well.
Okay, great.
Kind of leave those internal. Yeah. I think kind of the way I envision it is like IT break fix is incident, like kind of full stop. Kind of facilities and purchasing and all of the rest of those that aren't necessarily fix it fast incident requests, all of that can live in uh, service requests, including IT services. Um, Generally, that's a good, that's kind of a best practice. It doesn't always work out that way, especially with like a low information requester base. Like, what's the difference between me wanting this versus me needing this fixed? But kind of the best case is having incidents be actual incidents and then having everything else be service requests. But I think for the purposes, at least to start, we'll build everything out under service request. Kind of leave it all there, and then that'll give you room that if you decide that you want to break out true incidents into the incident module at a later date, you can. It's always better to start small and expand versus dump a fully mature process on a unsuspecting user base.
Hey, quick question while you're on that note. If you break it down to three areas for, let's just say, for example, facilities, IT, and purchasing. Now, can we have them in their own little section so that when we build reports, we're only going off of reports with facilities instead of bringing it in, can I build the reports just in the facility area?
Yeah.
And so on, they can build reports in just the IT area.
So essentially, that'll just end up being another part of your filter.
Okay, that'd be like so that I can set my dashboard up that way.
Yeah. So essentially, if you're building like a brand new like grid report, a part of your filter is I just want to see facilities requests.
And
Or
okay.
I just want
And that category would be facilities, and then it'll just catch anything under facilities.
exactly.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And just so everybody's aware too, the great benefit of that is that if somebody does submit something to IT, we can actually repurpose that back to facilities without having to tell them to recreate the whole request.
Yeah, that's a good one, because I always like copy and snip it to Jose and say, hey, I think this one's yours.
Exactly the same thing the other way around. You send it to us, or if it ends up being a
Yep.
D request, we send it to D.
Yep, you got it.
Yeah, absolutely, we can do that. Now, there may be, depending on requests having different fields filled out, they might have to refill out that data. But truthfully, I think if you set up your forms the right way, they'll realize halfway through that. I mean, hopefully they'll, probably not actually, but realize that none of the information that they're filling out is actually relevant to what they want. Usually that's a good hint that you're filling out the wrong form, at least at a requester level. But
Can you set the request up as if they don't fill out one area, they can't submit it until they fill out that area?
yeah,
Even
absolutely.
if it's like a drop down, like not applicable or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. We can absolutely set fields to be required, set sections to be required.
Okay.
Now, something to note that's a little bit, I would even call it a design flaw with ChangeGear is if you have a lot of required fields on a form, you will run into an issue in that in order to save a ticket as a draft, like let's say you're filling it out, but you're not quite ready, you still need to have all of the required fields filled out before you can save as a draft. So I guess that's just something to be aware of as we design our forms. But
We didn't have that many before, but take a look at that Word document I had sent over. You'll kind of get a gist of what we're looking at.
yeah, let me. Huh. So I got the. The Excel file. I'm looking through my
I think that was back on the 15th or 14th.
15th. Okay. That might have been the earliest email I have from us is the 18th. Yeah, I'll keep digging. But actually, maybe resend it my way just to be safe. I'm getting a folder going just so I have everything.
Yeah, let me just take a look. It's off my list now with quick sends.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess since we have a half an hour left, I feel like we're kind of in the process of wrapping up. First things first for tomorrow, we're going to kind of cover the very specific nuances of service request management, at least as far as like administering it with ChangeGear. And then we can, I think, as part of training, we can probably do screen share, and I'll let each of you drive, and we'll go through building out some of these different forms and workflow. So I don't know who's most ready as far as getting a form built out, but I think that's usually a good way of kind of seeing it being done, especially with live information. And then of course doing it yourself.
We vote for Brent.
All right, Brent.
I'm sorry, he stepped away.
So yeah, I guess to recap quick, tomorrow I'm just going to really quickly cover the nuance specific to service request module. And then if we're all ready, I figure we can start kind of letting you all drive and building out forms. Guided form build out, and everything like that. So.
Hey, Brent, I need that on my computer.
We'll need a request.
Ha
You got to build it first.
Okay, and then just, Justin, before we wrap up, is there anybody on from materials purchasing?
Yes, I'm here. It's Kat.
Okay, Kat, did you have any goals or requests specifically for Justin for tomorrow? I know your area is unique.
Yeah, well, we're having a meeting with Genevieve on Thursday. So I think we're going to get more into it with her, and then she'll get with him with what we're needing.
Okay, Genevieve, can I ask who that is?
And
she's with ChangeGear.
Okay. Justin, were you aware of that?
Yeah, I am on that invite with Geneva.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Geneva.
Excellent. Okay, so you'll drill down on some of your stuff then on Thursday.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you for that info.
What's the Thursday one? I don't have that as far as an invite goes.
This Thursday, as a matter of fact.
I have a Thursday at 2.
Yeah.
Described as CMDB scoping.
Is that coming out of the training hours, or is that just a scope?
I'm not gonna bill it. I think that's more directed out of account management than anything that I'm not running it.
Okay.
I'll say at least.
Because I assumed that we were going to cover all that in some of the later trainings that we hadn't defined yet.
Yeah, we likely will. I think this is mostly just like a scoping call as far as the CMDB is concerned, because if, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like the purchasing group is some unique requirements.
Yeah, that's exactly what we need.
So I think this will be more to kind of nail down what exactly we need to do to meet those requirements versus just overall CMDB training.
Yeah, we wanted to nail down exactly what we were going to need more so than having everybody else involved, because we're Like you said, we're special.
Okay, so Kat, to Brent's point, we just need to make sure we have a certain amount of, training hours on the project. So we want to make sure we're coordinating. So if you could, please open up that appointment to Brent, so
Okay.
that he makes sure, because he's doing general management of the project. So we just want to make sure we're aware of all the pieces and parts. So we appreciate it.
Okay, not a problem.
Okay, great. So are we all set for today then?
Yeah, I think that's all for today, at least from my point of view. It certainly is a lot of information in one day, and I think it'll start to make a lot more sense once you have your hands on it tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed on here tomorrow we have on the agenda there's a self-service portal service catalog.
Yeah, I'm going to end up adjusting this agenda since we ended up covering quite a bit of this today, actually. So we did kind of briefly cover the self-service portal before. That was this part.
We were actually looking at possibly formatting that page, having some pieces on there. So
yeah. We can.
That's a more
I'll
in-depth
leave that
stuff.
on the calendar. That can be something we handle.
Okay,
I'll leave that on the.
We'll approach that tomorrow then for the tomorrow's agenda. Did anyone else have any other questions for today?
No, thank you, Justin, and we appreciate getting started, that's for sure. We're anxious to get on the new tools.
Absolutely.
So we'll look forward to a deeper dive tomorrow then. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We will see you tomorrow at noon.